If you're the kind of person who gets one rude text and spends the whole night arguing in your head, this is for you. If you don't fix this, you'll keep letting other people's moods wreck your sleep, your focus, and your relationships. Today I'll give you one rule and one line that change how you react in that exact moment. We'll use it in a real Friday night text fight where you'd normally lose it. If that sounds like something you need, stay with me. Your phone lights up with their name again. You already know it's not going to be a kind message, but you open it anyway. One sarcastic line, maybe a little dig about how you never show up, and your chest tightens. You feel that familiar wave of heat run through your body, and before you even think, your thumbs are already moving, typing something you know you'll regret and reread 10 times later. Here's the uncomfortable truth: some people really do know how to push your buttons, but the bigger problem is that you keep handing them the controller. You've gotten so used to reacting in the same way that it feels automatic, like there's no space between what they do and what you do next. You know how this goes. At work, you see a Slack message from your boss that sounds a little sharp and suddenly you can't focus for 20 minutes, instead you're replaying the last meeting, wondering if you screwed up. With family, that one relative adds a little jab at dinner and you go from calm to defensive before you've even swallowed your food. In relationships, your partner rolls their eyes or goes quiet, and you feel this urgent need to fix it, explain yourself, or clap back. And afterward, you're left with the same pattern: regret about what you said, shame about how you acted, and hours lost replaying the conversation in your head. Over time, it doesn't just cost you peace, it can cost you trust, opportunities, respect, even money if your reactions spill into your work. The real price is your self-respect when you realize, again, I let them drag me out of character. Today, we're going to start changing that. By the time we're done, you'll have a few simple, repeatable moves you can use when someone pokes at you: how to slow yourself down when your body is hot, how to separate the facts from the story in your head, how to protect your job and relationships from heat-of-the-moment reactions, and how to walk away from a conversation actually feeling proud of how you handled yourself instead of replaying it all night. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, we're going to break apart the belief that I can't help it, that's just how I react, and replace it with something much more useful: I can't control them, but I can change my next move. Next, we'll look at what actually happens inside your body and your thoughts in the first few seconds when someone triggers you, and how to use that moment as a lever instead of a trap. Then we'll walk through specific lines you can say, both out loud and in your head, that buy you space in real situations: at work, with family, with your partner, with that one friend who never seems to respect your time. After that, we'll put 2 or 3 of those tools together in a real-life scenario, the kind of Friday night situation where you would usually blow up or shut down, and you'll see what it looks like to do it differently. Finally, we'll end with a handful of things you can do today, small, concrete actions, to start retraining yourself so calm becomes your default, not just something you hope for. In a bit, we'll walk through a specific night where you're already tired, your phone lights up with a message that would usually send you over the edge, and you'll get to see exactly how using one simple sentence keeps you from exploding on someone you actually care about. And when you see how different that night ends, it'll be a lot harder to keep believing that you're just an angry person or too sensitive, and a lot easier to see that you're trainable, and that your buttons don't have to control you. There's one move that changes almost everything: you stop treating your first reaction as a command. The instruction here is simple, but not always easy. Whenever someone pushes your buttons, your first job is not to respond, your first job is to slow your body down. Not your entire life, not the whole situation, just your body in the next 10 to 30 seconds. If you don't change this, your nervous system will keep making decisions for you. The stakes are real. If you keep responding from that first rush of heat, you'll keep saying things you don't mean, sending texts you wish you could unsend, and making tiny, emotional choices at work that add up to damaged trust. Here's why this works. When someone says or does something that feels like a threat, criticizes you, ignores you, talks over you, your body lights up faster than your thinking brain. Heart rate jumps, muscles tighten, breath shortens. Your brain takes the physical spike as proof that something is wrong, and it wants to fix it fast. So it urges you to fire back, over-explain, defend, or shut down. But if you deliberately slow your breathing, even for a few seconds, you send a different signal back to your brain: we're not in a life or death situation. That gives your thinking brain a shot at coming online again. This is how a calmer, more focused version of you responds instead of reacting. You're not pretending you're okay, you're just refusing to let adrenaline be the one driving the car. You need one exact line you can use in the heat of the moment, something that doesn't escalate but buys you time. When you feel that rush, you can say to yourself, okay, my body's loud. That doesn't mean I have to move. If you're in a conversation and someone throws a jab, you might say out loud, give me a second to think about that, or, I need a moment, I'll respond in a bit. Natural, simple, no big speech. The point isn't to sound profound, the point is to create a small pause where your body can come down a little before you decide anything. Picture this. You're at your desk, halfway through your day. You're already juggling a deadline, and an email pops up from your manager. Why is this taking so long? No greeting, no context. Your chest tightens, your face gets hot, and your first impulse is to fire back. Because you dumped 3 projects on me, that's why. In the old pattern, you'd either send something sharp and regret it later or spend the next hour rewriting your reply 10 times. This time, you catch yourself. You notice your heartbeat. Instead of typing, you push your chair back slightly, plant your feet on the floor, and slowly inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, then exhale for 6. You do it again. In your head you say, my body's loud. That doesn't mean I have to move. When you feel a little less shaky, you type, got your message. I'm juggling X, Y, and Z, and I'm aiming to have this on your desk by 3 p.m. If that timing doesn't work, let me know what's most urgent. Same situation, totally different energy. You didn't give your first reaction the keys. A tiny action you can take today is to create a default pause rule for yourself. Decide that whenever you feel that surge, tight chest, heat in your face, pressure to answer right now, you will do 3 slow breaths before you type, text, or speak. That's it. 3 breaths isn't a lifestyle, it's a move. You can even write it on a sticky note near your workspace, 3 breaths before I respond. Hold on to this simple rule, because when we get to that Friday night story later, you'll see how those 3 breaths are the difference between a ruined weekend and a quiet night you actually enjoy. Another shift that changes how you handle button pushers is learning to separate what actually happened from the story your mind builds around it. The instruction here is, when you feel triggered, you consciously ask, what are the facts, and what's my story? You do this because if you treat your story as truth, you will start defending yourself against things that never actually happened. If you don't change this, you'll keep having fights based on assumptions, not reality, and those fights can tear apart relationships that could have been repaired. This works because your brain hates gaps. When something feels off, someone is shorter than usual, takes longer to reply, and looks at you a certain way, it rushes to fill in the blank with an explanation. And that explanation is usually based on your old experiences, insecurities, and fears, not on what's really going on right now. So if you grew up around criticism, your brain might interpret any neutral feedback as I'm failing. If you've been cheated on, a delayed text becomes, they're probably talking to someone else. Stoic thinkers like Epictetus would remind you that it's not the event itself that disturbs you, but the judgment you place on it. When you train yourself to name the facts first, you create a little distance between reality and your fear. That distance is where calmer, smarter responses live. You can use a simple line here, the only facts I have are, and then you fill in the blanks. If you're about to send a risky text or you're spiraling mentally, say to yourself, pause. The only facts I have are that they said X and I feel Y. Everything else is my story. If you're talking to someone and you need to slow the moment down, you can say, here's what I actually heard you say, instead of, so you're basically saying I'm a failure. It keeps the conversation grounded instead of spinning into accusations. Imagine you're texting someone you're dating. You send a long message sharing something vulnerable. They read it but don't reply for an hour. Then 2. Then 4. Your mind goes into overdrive. In the old pattern, the story shows up fast, they don't care. They're bored of me. I shouldn't have shared that. I always mess this up. You start typing, deleting, stalking their social media, and maybe even sending a second text. You know what, forget it. This time, you stop. You notice your chest tightening and your thoughts speeding up. You say, okay, what are the facts? You literally list them in your head or on your notes app. Fact, I sent a message at 3:12 p.m. Fact, it's now 7:45 p.m. Fact, they've posted on Instagram once. Fact, I feel anxious and disappointed. Then, what's my story? You notice thoughts like, they don't respect me, I'm too much, they're ghosting me. You label them as stories, not facts. That doesn't magically make the anxiety vanish, but it does stop you from treating your story like proof. Instead of firing off a reactive text, you decide to let the night pass and see how they show up tomorrow. You shifted from defending yourself against your imagination to responding to reality. A small, concrete action you can practice today is this: the next time you feel upset by someone's message or tone, before you respond, open your notes app and write 2 short lines. 1. Facts, and list 2 or 3 neutral statements. 2. Story, and write 1 sentence about what you're telling yourself this means. Don't edit it, just name it. Then, only after that, decide whether to reply now, later, or at all. That little act of sorting is like cleaning your mental dashboard, and it'll make it much easier to stay grounded when someone pushes your buttons later. There's another powerful move that keeps emotional fire from burning up your whole day: you stop treating every provocative message like a fire alarm that needs an instant response. The instruction here is to create a reply window for emotionally loaded conversations. That means you decide in advance that certain topics or certain people do not get instant access to you. If you never do this, you'll keep living in a state of constant alert, jumping every time your phone buzzes, and your entire schedule will be hijacked by whoever is the most dramatic or demanding. Why does this help so much? Because urgency is one of the main fuels of emotional reactivity. When you believe you have to reply right now, your brain prioritizes speed over wisdom. It pushes you toward whatever will reduce the discomfort fast, snapping back, over-explaining, people-pleasing, saying yes when you mean no. But when you give yourself permission to respond later, you reclaim control over your time and your nervous system. It also silently teaches other people that they don't own your attention. Stoic writers like Seneca talked a lot about guarding your time as your most precious resource. This is one modern way of doing that: you guard not just your hours, but your attention in heated moments. You'll need one simple line that holds the boundary without inviting more argument. To yourself, the script is, I don't respond to emotionally heavy stuff on impulse. Out loud or in text, you can say, got your message. I'll think about it and get back to you tomorrow, or, I'm not in the best headspace to respond right now. I'll reply later. Short, clear, no apology necessary. You're not stonewalling, you're pacing the conversation in a way that protects your sanity. Let's place this in a North American co-parenting or family setting. You're at work, about to hop on a Zoom meeting, and you get a long, emotionally charged text from your ex about the kid's schedule. There are accusations, comparisons, and a few low blows. Your stomach drops. The old pattern kicks in, you start typing back furiously, trying to correct every detail, prove you're not the bad guy, and the meeting starts with you distracted, unfocused, and edgy. This time, you catch the pattern. You remember your reply window. You take a slow breath and say in your head, this doesn't get instant access to me. You text back, I see this matters a lot. I'm at work right now. I'll look at this properly tonight and respond by 8 p.m. Then you put your phone face down and go into your meeting. Later that evening, when you're calmer and not juggling work, you look at the message again. Some of the heat is gone, on your side at least. You're able to respond to the actual logistics and skip the bait. The argument that would have eaten up your whole afternoon becomes a contained, manageable conversation. A tiny action you can take today is to define one category of messages that will always fall under a reply window. It might be anything involving money, anything from a specific person, or any message that makes your heart race. Decide your window. Maybe I respond to those within 24 hours, not instantly. If you want to make it more concrete, add a line to your notes. Heated texts equals reply within 24 hours, not within 5 minutes. The next time someone pushes your buttons in that category, you'll know your move before you even open the message. Another layer of emotional control is deciding who you want to be before you walk into triggering situations, instead of deciding in the middle of the storm. The instruction here is to choose a personal standard for how you behave, no matter how someone else behaves. The core line could be, I don't match other people's chaos. If you don't choose a standard like this, you'll let the loudest person in the room set your tone. They raise their voice, you raise yours. They get petty, you get petty. And afterward, even if you feel justified, you still feel like you lost something. This works because your brain likes identity-based rules more than vague wishes. I want to be calmer is soft and easy to forget. I'm someone who doesn't yell, even when others do, is specific and easier to follow. It becomes a kind of internal policy. When a moment gets heated, instead of asking, what do they deserve right now, you ask, who am I choosing to be right now? That shift doesn't mean you become passive or let people walk all over you. It simply means you stop letting them drag you out of the version of yourself you respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this idea often, holding to your own principles regardless of what others do. In modern terms, it's choosing your behavior from your values instead of your mood. You can turn that into a microscript. To yourself, you might say, I don't match their tone, I match my standards. Out loud, when things get heated, you can say, I'm not going to raise my voice, but I'm open to talking, or, if we're going to talk, I need it to stay respectful. It's not dramatic, it's steady. You're making your standard clear without attacking. Picture a family dinner. Someone brings up a sensitive topic, your job, your relationship status, your choices, and that one relative takes a dig. So, how's that little project of yours going? Still not a real job? A few people laugh. The old pattern might be to fire back with something equally sharp, or to shut down and stew for the rest of the night. This time, you remember your standard. In your head you say, I don't match their chaos. You take a breath, feel your feet on the floor, and say calmly, I get that you might not understand what I do yet, but I'm not okay with jokes that put me down. You keep your tone even. Maybe they roll their eyes, maybe they brush it off. But you stayed inside your standard. You'll drive home later feeling uncomfortable, sure, but not ashamed of your behavior. You'll feel like you have your own back. A practical action you can take is to write down 1 or 2 personal rules about how you want to behave when you're triggered. Keep it simple and positive. I don't yell, I don't insult people, I don't text when I'm furious, I don't argue over text at midnight. Pick just one for now, write it somewhere you'll see it, and read it before you walk into a situation you know might be tense. That way, when someone presses your buttons, you're not improvising, you're following your own standard. Another key move is learning how to give your nervous system a physical exit before your mouth makes a mess you have to clean up later. The instruction here is, when you feel yourself heating up, you physically change your environment before you continue the conversation. That might look like stepping outside, going to the bathroom, walking to the end of the block, or even just standing up and getting water. If you don't build this habit, you'll keep having intense, emotional conversations in the exact same spot where you got triggered, with no chance for your body to reset. Why does this help? Because your body anchors emotions to places and postures. Sitting hunched over your phone on the couch arguing with someone feels very different from standing on the porch breathing in cool air. When you move, even a little, you interrupt the pattern. Your heart rate starts to drop, your perspective widens, and you're less likely to say the thing that feels good for 5 seconds and terrible for the next 5 days. It's not about running away from every hard conversation. It's about giving your system a quick reset so you can come back with an actual choice instead of an explosion. You can use a simple script to make this possible in real life. To yourself, you say, I'm allowed to step away and come back. To the other person, you can say, I'm getting really worked up. I'm going to step outside for a minute and then we can talk, or, I need a quick break, I'll be back in 10 minutes. This doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't slam doors, you just step out and give your system a chance to calm down. You're not abandoning the conversation, you're protecting it. Picture a workplace scene. You're in a meeting room with a colleague who keeps talking over you and dismissing your suggestions. At some point, they say, honestly, I don't think you're seeing the bigger picture here, in a tone that drips with condescension. Your jaw tightens, your shoulders rise, and your instinct is to snap back. Maybe if you listen for once, the air gets thick. In the old pattern, you'd either blow up, get passive-aggressive for the rest of the project, or shut down and replay their words all night. This time, you recognize the signs. You say, I'm feeling pretty heated right now. I'm going to grab some water and come back in a few minutes so we can actually figure this out. Without waiting for permission, you stand up, walk out, and head down the hall. While you walk, you feel your feet hitting the floor, take a few slow breaths, and maybe even write a couple of words in your notes about what the actual issue is. When you return, your voice is steadier, and you can say, okay, here's my concern about the timeline, and here's what I'm proposing, instead of, you're always so dismissive. A tiny action you can practice soon is to identify 1 or 2 go-to exits you can use in your real life. Maybe it's I step onto the balcony, or I walk to the lobby, or I go to the bathroom and run my hands under cool water. Decide on a default line you'll use, I need a minute, I'll be back, and practice saying it out loud once or twice when you're calm. That way, when someone pushes your buttons, those words are already familiar and ready to go. Sooner or later, you'll have to deal with people who don't just accidentally push your buttons, they seem to enjoy it. Maybe it's that friend who always makes jokes at your expense, the parent who brings up the same painful topic every call, or the coworker who loves stirring the pot. The instruction here is, with chronic button pushers, you don't debate your boundaries every time, you repeat them. If you don't learn this, you'll get sucked into endless arguments about whether your boundary is valid, instead of calmly holding it and moving on. This approach works because some people use your explanations as fuel. The more you explain why you don't like a joke, why you don't drink anymore, why you don't want to talk about your dating life, the more material they have to poke at. When you shift from explaining to calmly repeating, you stop feeding the fire. You're training them, and yourself, in a new pattern. You say what's okay and what's not, and you stick to it. You're no longer auditioning for their approval. This is the kind of steady, self-respecting behavior that slowly changes how people treat you, or at least how long they stay in your life. You'll need a microscript that is clear and repeatable. To yourself, you might say, I don't argue my boundary, I repeat it. Out loud, you can use lines like, I've already shared my answer on this, or, I'm not discussing that, or, if you keep making that joke, I'm going to step away. Calm tone, no anger, no over-explaining. You're drawing a line, not giving a speech. Imagine you've got a friend group that likes to go out and drink hard every weekend. You've decided to cut back for your own reasons, money, health, focus, all of it. But every time you say no, one friend in particular starts poking, come on, don't be boring. What's one night? You used to be fun. The old pattern might be to give in, go out and resent it, or to launch into a long explanation, I'm just trying to save money, I've got this project, I really need to focus, and so on, hoping they'll finally understand. They don't. They just keep pushing. This time, when they start, you say, I hear you want me to come out. I've already said I'm staying in tonight. They roll their eyes and try again, wow, okay, Grandpa. You reply, I'm not discussing this. If you keep pushing, I'm going to hop off this call. The tone is steady. When they keep poking, you say, all right, I'm out. Talk later, and you hang up. It's uncomfortable, yes. But you've trained yourself to hold the line. Next time, either they push less, or you start getting clearer about how much access they get to you. A concrete action you can take is to choose one recurring topic or person where you know your buttons get pushed repeatedly. Write one boundary line you can repeat the next time it comes up. Something like, I'm not talking about my weight, or I'm not discussing my ex, or I'm not making decisions about money on the spot. Practice saying it out loud once. You're giving your future self a script so you don't have to improvise when your emotions are high. Even if you set standards and boundaries, there will still be moments when you slip, when you say something you wish you hadn't, raise your voice, or send that angry text. Emotional control isn't about becoming a robot, it's about shortening the distance between messing up and repairing. The instruction here is, instead of beating yourself up for every slip, you learn how to own it and reset. If you don't, every mistake turns into a self-hate spiral, and that spiral can drain you more than the argument itself. This approach works because shame is paralyzing, not corrective. When your inner voice goes, you always do this, you're terrible, nobody else freaks out like this, you're less likely to change your behavior next time. You'll either be overcompensated by people-pleasing or avoid hard conversations altogether. A Stoic perspective would remind you that the point isn't to never stumble, the point is to notice quickly, correct course, and move on. When you view each slip not as proof you're broken but as feedback on where you're still training, you can stay in motion instead of getting stuck in regret. You need a microscript that lets you own your behavior without collapsing into self-attack. To yourself, you can say, "That wasn't how I wanted to handle things. I can repair this." To the other person, a simple line like, "I'm not happy with how I spoke to you earlier. I was heated, and I'm sorry for that. Here's what I actually want to say," can go a long way. You're not excusing the behavior, you're acknowledging it and steering back toward the kind of person you're trying to be. Picture a relationship scene. You come home stressed from work. Your partner or roommate asks a simple question that hits you the wrong way. "Did you ever send that payment?" The landlord emailed again. You snap, "Why don't you do something for once instead of nagging me?" The room goes quiet. Their faces drop. 10 minutes later, you're alone in your room, and the guilt hits. The old pattern might be to avoid them for hours, scroll your phone to distract yourself, then act like nothing happened and hope it blows over. Or to stew in self-hate, "I'm such a terrible partner, I always ruin everything," without actually fixing anything. This time, you choose a different route. After you've cooled off a bit, you walk back out and say, "Hey, earlier I snapped at you. I'm not okay with how I spoke. I was stressed about money and took it out on you. I'm sorry. What I actually want to say is that I feel overwhelmed, and I need help making a plan for this payment." You might feel awkward. They might still be upset. But you've done something powerful, you've taken responsibility without making yourself the worst person on earth. That's emotional control too. A tiny action you can try is this: think of one recent moment where you wish you had handled yourself better with someone. Before the day ends, send a short message or have a brief conversation where you own just your part. Use a line like, "I'm not proud of how I handled that. I'm working on doing better." You're training yourself in a new cycle: trigger, reaction, repair, learn, instead of trigger, reaction, and shame, repeat. By now, you've got several tools: slowing your body down, separating fact from story, using reply windows, choosing your standard, stepping away physically, repeating boundaries, and repairing when you slip. The question is how they look together, under pressure, in a real night that could go very badly or surprisingly well. So let's walk through that Friday night situation we opened earlier and see how this new version of you handles it. It's Friday, 6:47 p.m. You're finally home after a long week. You've been looking forward to a quiet night, maybe takeout, a show, maybe just scrolling in peace. You drop your bag, kick off your shoes, and as you're debating what to eat, your phone lights up. It's them. Maybe it's a sibling, an ex, a co-parent, or that one friend who always seems to start drama at the worst possible times. The preview of the text already makes your stomach clench. Wow. So I guess you've decided you're too busy and important for your family now. In the old version of this night, you'd open and instantly feel your heart rate spike and dive headfirst into defending yourself. You'd explain everything you've been doing, list all the ways you've been there, throw a few jabs of your own, and spend the next 2 hours glued to your phone while your food gets cold. You'd go to bed exhausted and wired, replaying every sentence. But tonight, you notice the surge. Your face gets hot, your chest tight, but instead of tapping the notification, you pause. You say quietly, "My body's loud. That doesn't mean I have to move." You put your phone face down on the counter. You inhale slowly for 4, exhale for 6, and do it 3 times. Your shoulders drop a little. You've just used the first tool, slowing your body before you respond. After that first wave, you pick up your phone and read the full message. It's worse than you thought. There's a whole paragraph about how you never show up, how you think you're better than everyone, maybe even a thread about not bothering to invite you next time. Your brain starts spinning a story fast. "They always do this, they don't see how hard I'm working, and maybe they're talking about me behind my back." You catch it. You open your notes app and type, "Facts, they sent a message at 6:49 saying I don't show up. I visited twice this month. I said no to one event last week. I feel hurt and angry." Then, story, "They don't care about anything I'm dealing with. They only see what they want." You sit with that for a second. It still hurts, but now you know what's real and what a story is. You don't have to defend yourself against every sentence your brain writes. You remember your reply window. It's Friday night. You're tired. This is not the moment to get dragged into an emotional trial. So instead of drafting a 3-screen long explanation, you decide this conversation falls under the 24-hour reply rule. You type, "I see you're upset. I just got home from a long week, and I'm not in a good headspace to get into this right now. I'll think about what you said and respond tomorrow." Your thumb hovers over send. The old voice in your head screams, "They're going to think you don't care." You have to explain. But you hear another line you've been practicing, "I don't match their chaos. I match my standards." You send the short reply and put your phone down. A few more texts come in. You glance only long enough to see they're still heated, but you don't open them. You feel the urge to go back on your rule. Instead, you use your physical exit. You grab your keys, walk out for a 10-minute lap around the block. The air is cooler than your kitchen. You feel your feet hitting the ground, one step at a time. You breathe. Maybe you even say out loud, "I'm allowed to step away and come back." By the time you're home, the messages are still there, but your body is different. Less shaking, less buzzing. You order your food, put on that show, and let yourself have the quiet night you needed. The next morning, you wake up clearer. You're still not thrilled about what they said, but you're not on fire anymore. You reread the messages. You ask yourself again, facts versus story? Fact, they're upset. Fact, they feel you're not showing up enough. Story, I'm a terrible sibling/child/friend. You decide to respond from your standards, not their accusations. You text, "I hear that you feel hurt and like I haven't been around enough. That matters to me. At the same time, I've been stretched thin with work and trying to keep my head above water. I'm not going to keep having this conversation in a blaming way, but I'm open to talking about specific plans so we can see each other more. If you're up for that, let's find a time to call next week." You've held your boundary, no attacking, no defending every accusation, no late-night drama. You've also shown you care. Maybe they respond well, maybe they don't. That part isn't fully in your control. But the outcome that is in your control is clear: you didn't spend your Friday night in a text war. You went to bed at a reasonable time. You woke up with more energy. You feel a quiet pride, not because you were perfect, but because you stayed closer to the person you want to be. That's emotional control. Not the absence of buttons, but the ability to decide, again and again, what you do when someone pushes them. What we've really been talking about this whole time is the shift from reacting on autopilot to responding on purpose when someone knows exactly how to get under your skin. It's the difference between letting every text, comment, or tone change your whole body and night, and becoming the kind of person who notices the surge, takes a breath, and chooses their next move. It's not about never getting triggered. It's about becoming someone you respect in those moments. We started by zooming in on that instant when your phone lights up where someone's tone shifts and your chest tightens. You saw how, in the past, you let your first reaction drag you into arguments, over-explaining, or silent spirals of overthinking. Then you learned that you can slow things down physically, 3 breaths, feet on the floor, so your body doesn't make the decision for you. After that, we talked about the power of separating what actually happened from the story your mind writes around it, so you're not fighting ghosts in your own head. From there, you saw how creating reply windows protects your time, your focus, and your sleep from late-night drama or work messages that feel like emergencies but usually aren't. We also explored what it means to choose a personal standard, the kind of rules that sound like, "I don't yell," or "I don't argue by text at midnight," and how those standards give you something steady to hold on to when someone else is spinning out. You learned how physically stepping away, leaving the room, going outside, getting water, can reset your nervous system enough that your next words don't come from panic. Then we got into dealing with chronic button pushers by repeating your boundaries instead of debating them, and how that slowly retrains the dynamic or clarifies who really gets access to you. Finally, we talked about what to do when you slip, how owning your behavior and repairing, instead of beating yourself up, is itself a form of emotional control. To lock this in, there are 3 things you can do today. First, pick one simple rule for your reactions, like 3 breaths before I respond to anything that upsets me, and write it somewhere you'll see it. Use it once, just once, the next time your body spikes. Second, choose one person or topic that tends to send you into emotional overdrive and decide on a reply window for it. Maybe, I only respond to their heavy texts after I've slept on it. When that next message comes, follow your rule. Third, think of one recent moment where you're not proud of how you reacted. Before the day ends, send a short message that says, "I'm not happy with how I handled that. I'm working on doing better," and notice how it feels to repair instead of just replay. If this hit home for you, the next natural step is to go deeper into boundaries, how to say no without over-explaining, how to deal with guilt when you disappoint people, and how to protect your energy in relationships that matter. A lesson on something like boundaries, saying no without feeling like the villain, would build straight on what you've started here. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.